extracurricular facilities that our children can be proud of. Your voices will be clear, powerful, and consistent. And we're glad that you guys have joined us tonight to continue to share those concerns. And my commitment is to continue to work with the board and Superintendent Swanson in addressing those concerns. You know what I have a script, oh my gosh, okay. You know what I at least want to share is that over the last 7 months, it was not as easy as when I decided to take on the education committee. It's not as easy as everybody thinks it is, and it's not because we can't do the work. There's just so much. GDUE is such a huge agency. I mean, I have oversight of the library, the public library. I have oversight of PBS, and I don't ever hear from them. I communicate with the superintendent almost weekly in regards to funding, to issues from parents, to issues from employees, communication with the board, and we definitely have our hands full. But a lot of the issues that have been raised, it can work. It's just not as easy as snapping our fingers, right, or directing the superintendent to take action and that's going to be fixed, because it's more than just directing the superintendent. It goes down to getting the central staff to execute specific requirements and then follow, manage through the bureaucracy to get things done. And so I again want to thank the parents, the teachers especially, who the schools that are in double session, for really being patient. We'll continue to work with the superintendent and his team to hopefully get FDLG open on time, and I'm sure they'll provide an update on that in regards to moving FD back to their home. And hopefully that could also address the Simon Sanchez double session. So with that, I'll pass it over to the superintendent, who will maybe like to introduce his team again, or they have some stuff that they'd like to update the community on.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you. So now we're live. So the original agenda that we received for the conversation today centered around the logistics and preparation that we made for the new school year. So we'll run through that information provided to you, so we get everybody on the same page where that is. Can I have the next slide, please? Those are the 4 topic areas that were presented to us to provide information for us. There's a fair amount of detailed information in this presentation. And me being someone who is actually visually handicapped, I'm going to go right to the screen.
Next previous slide.
No, the second slide is fine. Next one. Okay, here we go. Campus readiness overview. Questions were asked about, were we ready for school, ready to open? And the short answer is yes. We opened all of our campuses on time. First day of school, that all went really well. So in that process, we've been working on how to stay ahead of the public health inspection process. To date, we have 23 schools already have been re-inspected. They're all certified, but we're doing the renewal inspections now. So we have 23 done, actually 24, because Keegan High School was finished, and we got the results today. So we still haven't, where next one's up are in around my middle, Agania Heights, and Tamuman Elementary. The schedule will complete by the end of December. We will recertify all of the schools again, so they're set clear into the next school. So the lowest inspection score, by low we mean the lowest number of the variance, was Telefoco Elementary with 3, and they're an A-rated school. So you can see, if you can see the numbers, and we've listed all of the grades that the schools have. We have 2 with A's, so the other one was an A in the Stumble Middle School. So that's the goal for everybody to get from a C rating to an A rating. We have a number of schools that have come up to B's. The point is, all of the effort that was put in over the last 2 years to bring our school into compliance with public health rules and regulations have been accomplished, and we're now in the second stage of reinforcing the work and going to the next level. So that's where that whole readiness piece comes in terms of quality of the school. And if you've been on campuses, as I have, and so on my staff, we look way different than they did last year. And we need to thank our community, the mayors and families, the school staff, our maintenance team especially, for the work that's been done to bring the standards up. Are they perfect yet? No, not at all. There's always work to do. But we'll continue to do that work. Okay, Nick, for the next slide. Some of the things that were done over the summer, you remember last year when we reopened Southern High School late, and then when we did, we had several areas of the school that were closed. School opened on time this year, the library had been redone, the nurse's office redone, and the gym redone, and they are all open with the rest of the school. We have, the only thing left now on the campus is taking care of outdoor athletic facilities, and we have a planning process for doing that. We also were able to go down to Martyrs Elementary and replace all of the canopies. That's not part of the rest of the project, as our FM folks are doing the work with the materials that we have. And something that's not very attractive, but it's really important, is grease straps off the kitchens, and we're in the process of replacing those so that we have good sanitation. And we have to do in Dodson Elementary and GW High School, the first two, but we have to plan for all the rest of those facilities. And then elevators. That's some situations with elevators. Southern High School and Timberland Elementary. I'm happy to report that the Southern High School elevator passed inspection today. The Timberland Elementary School, one of the two elevators, has been certified as well. And we're working on a plan now to take care of all the other elevators in the school system, which there's a number, I think there are 16 or 17 more that we need to deal with in the operation and maintenance. Next slide, please. Addressing other maintenance concerns. We're getting ready to start into air conditioning preventive maintenance that will commence beginning of September, or the end of September. This is the preventive maintenance that went to the contract, the new equipment that was put in the last 2 years. And then this other contract has been renewed for another 3-year period. We have 3 pending important 1-year contracts doing 1 year so we can improve them more quickly, or we can negotiate longer term ones for grounds maintenance. That's ever-present grass cutting this time of year especially. Solid waste collection, that's all of the trash removal. And pest control services, those are things you may not think about all the time with regard to the school, but just taking out the trash on a regular basis is a bit of a challenge. Because we have anticipated projects and putting out invitations for bids that have to do with restroom renovations. Those are for the schools that are not in the current project. Crack and spall repair, if you don't understand what those are, when the concrete in the roof of the concrete building cracks, then the water gets in it and then it starts to break away. That becomes dangerous structurally, so we have to make repairs on that. It also allows water to penetrate the building, and then we start to have discoloration and mold problems, those sorts of things. Elevator repair and modernization, we have a project that we're getting ready to do all of the elevator repairs that we have so that all of the buildings that are multi-story have vertical access. We have to do some more retrofitting with air conditioning. We still have not quite finished that contract. And then demolition of disposable temporary buildings, for example. We have several campuses with old frame buildings that need to be demolished and removed. They're not being used, they're condemned, so we need to get them off the campus. And then continue to do sports facility repairs. Now, a lot of that is pending the final outcome of the budget. There's provision in to do that work until the budget is signed and is law, and then you really can do it. Next slide. At Vila and Guerrero, the The contract has never really stopped, but it really, really slowed down. While we were shut off from art funding for 6 weeks during the summer, the contractor on this one ran out of materials basically, but we didn't have funding to pay them. And they're working at full speed, and it looks like that we should be able to have the building ready for inspection and come back online at the end of March. That put us off the schedule that we planned for, because we were trying to get that done by the end of December, but we're going to be sure the materials that were supplied out of our building. So, picture on the right is the beginning of a renovated restroom. All of the fixtures are out. It's open retile. This is throughout the school. And then now the canopy connecting all of the exterior classrooms have all been put in, and we shot up the internal work in the office of this going on. To give you a quick overview, is installation of A-wing restrooms. That's what's on the right there. Walkway canopy installations are going on. Floor and ceiling tile repair and installation. Classroom office partitions. The lower damage is pretty significant inside the building, so quite a bit of that going out and done. And exterior and interior painting, of course, and then anticipated completion in March of 26. Pending solicitation for the school's cafeteria equipment and the student teacher collateral equipment. And right now, we're bogged down in the contracting process. There's like a funding identified, but we have the contract negotiated. The change order that's listed there is up against our FEMA claim for the building, because that was $3 million of additional damage that was not anticipated, because the contract was due before March, and this is the result of what's after March. That includes new air conditioning units, interior doors, replacement of electrical junction boxes, communication boxes. Basically, that infrastructure was destroyed. Replacement of interior switches, and wiring and conduit. And then there's part of it we want to replace cable that was stolen from the site that was not part of it. And then repair the major damaged isolation valves and water systems. So there's still quite a bit of work to do. The work is on schedule. The contractor now has a full team on board, and his payments are up to date, so he can procure the materials he needs. Next slide. Everybody gets excited about the bathrooms. If you haven't been on one of the campuses that are completed, it really is a big difference, and it's something that was needed for years. But there are 5 different areas of work that are being done in these 12 schools. The first is the crack and spoil and roof coating to basically seal the envelope of the building, keep the weather out, and the air conditioning and restroom fixture replacements. Beyond that is also complete refurbishment of the restrooms to include demolishing all the interior finishes, taking it down to bare concrete, and bringing it back to standard. Exterior door replacements. And you'll look down here at the bottom. I said for 1,527 doors that we're putting in. You think about just the logistics of that, getting aluminum doors in that number on island and assembled and installed is pretty significant. Electrical upgrades on several of the schools. We found that the electrical power that was provided to the building was for the age before technology beyond the light bulb. So we had to do some work to increase the capacity to be able to handle air conditioning technology that we're using. And canopy installation and repair on all the campuses. So on the right-hand side, we can see what things have been completed. So right now, crack and spoil and roof coating for all 12 schools has been completed. That's done. Restroom fixtures replacements. The 2 schools that are completed are I think Johnson and GW. If you've been on either one of those campuses, you can go in and see in any restrooms, which include small individual faculty restrooms or multi-person hallway, there's hallways. The other schools, those are all ongoing at the time, so Project has teams on each campus working with the principals to keep the number of necessary active restrooms operational while they shut down the ones and demolish them and replace everything. That's going pretty well. Of course, that team works really great with our principals. The principals have been outstanding too, working with the team and also working with managing the traffic flow of students and faculty. Electrical upgrade, there are 6 of the 12 schools. Jose Rios Middle School, that one's already finished, but the other 5, I got Johnson's also finished. The other 4 are still ongoing. And then the exterior door replacement, on all 12 schools, we're 58% complete out of that 15 sets of doors. And the canopy and insulation repair across all the campuses was delayed until October, because when we had to pause, materials are coming out of Korea, and the contractor had to cancel his orders for the materials because we didn't know if we were going to have our funding resubmitted or restored to us. As soon as we got it restored, they reordered it, but that put the materials in the production line for the manufacturer down the list. So the last thing that's going to come in is all the materials for the canopies. Next slide. I can't say much about Simon Sanchez High School. It's classified. And what I can say is joint negotiations between DPW along with us, UDOH, and the contract are underway and nearing completion. They are not complete. Once the construction contract is signed at that level and approved at the Attorney General and the governing level, work can begin. Further details cannot be released at this time because of the risks in the procurement process. But that's almost over. It's been quite a bit of work on the part of a lot of folks, and everybody at the table is wanting to get it done. That's about all I'm allowed to say about it. And so, is there one more slide? That's it. We're done. There we go. Questions. So I'll field questions about this part of it, if we have them. Wow. Okay, got one back here. I'll get back in my spot.
Sorry, I don't know if this is the right time, but I just want to advocate for more emphasis and urgency on the relocation of Simon Sanchez High School, because this double session has really affected our students' mental health, right? Because of this double session, we don't have transition time between first and second block. 7 of my classmates were targeted today to an AP class. Because it was an AP class, they're not usually people to slack off and intentionally skip class. Our lunch periods are shorter. Lunch periods are where kids who aren't privileged enough to eat and socialize outside of school, like this is the only chance to get to make connections and build skills that you just can't learn in the classroom and eat lunch. Like these skills are all diminished because long restroom lines, because of the because there's just no break time in between first and second block. There's 174 minutes of straight class time and only 40 or 50 minutes of lunch. So besides that, also class and club meetings. Class events and club events are one of the only ways students can also socialize. And to me, school is about learning, but also you can be the smartest person in the world, but if your mental health isn't in the right place, then you're just not as effective. And then, like I said, according to Harvard Health, the brain experiences cognitive fatigue after about 45 to 90 minutes. And I've experienced this myself, like in the middle of my second block, I just can't retain the same knowledge that I would retain otherwise. So I'm just advocating for that because students aren't robots, and if you want them to perform at full potential, we need to do in-depth research on these cognitive functions. So yeah, I'm not trying to just go against Sanchez and all that because I really do think we're both struggling with this, but I'm just advocating for more urgency on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you for your concerns. My first question would be, have you brought this up to your administration? Okay, and then what has the outcome been?
Currently,
You have
the
a
student.
microphone?
Oh, yeah. So I recently spoke about this at the PTSA meeting for this month, and then our admin told us that it's better to have more input on the entirety of the student body. So right now, me as the president of my class, the senior class, we're starting a petition for our students around the school. We're spreading it everywhere to get their input on it, because I can say all I want, but of course I can't speak for all the different people in my school. So right now we are currently working on that. I'm getting more numbers to support all of my claims, and that should be coming soon, and I hope I can bring it up to you guys.
Okay, so once you get your information, you can share that with your administration, and basically they can review the bell schedule to make it more accommodating to your concerns. But I do also want to point out that in August of 2025, we actually had a survey go out to all the double session schools. And so I'm not sure if the results were shared with you, but ultimately we're still in the double session of the 4 schools. But I do want to point out, we had different options, right? Status quo. One of the options was even quote unquote far-fetched, to where students would attend 3 days in a row, and then the other school would attend the other 3 days to include Saturday. So we threw out different options just because it came our way. And when I say we, I'm talking about it's called the Commander, the Committee to Maximize District Resources. And so that consisted of school administrators. We had district office personnel as well. We set up a survey that was for students, parents, faculty, and staff to give their input. And basically, we're in double session as a status quo fix until FBLG was completed. And let me just give you the recommendations of the Commander Committee. So for the high school, a total of 366 parents and guardians completed the survey, 184. Actually, it was 184 for JFK, 184 for Simon Sanchez, and then we had 959 students and employees. JFK had 124 participate, and Simon Sanchez had 835 participate. 794 were students, and 165 were faculty and staff. Overall, the most preferred option by all stakeholders, the most preferred is to remain status quo, and that was 42% of parents and guardians and 50% of students and employees. It is also important to note that the next preferred option was to have double session at FBLG once the refurbishment was complete. And so, of course, there's no way we could have anticipated that the president would cause our ARP funding to be retracted until it was reinstated, with conditions that we would have to pay for the funding upfront and then reimbursed. And so the Guam Education Board, knowing the Commander results, did stipulate that the double session would be in effect until FBLG was completed. And I do want to point out that we have the principal of Simon Sanchez High School, and one of the concerns that kept coming up in the survey and in their PTSA meetings was that for Simon Sanchez and FBLG, they want, if that was the option, they would want to have double session among themselves, because then they would be in GIGO and they wouldn't be driving all the way to JFK or Ukudu High School. And so that's what we're waiting for. And so now we're looking at FBLG being completed possibly in March of 2026, and looking at the opening of school year 26-27 with the double session at the FBLG campus. And so we've heard your concerns via the survey, via the PTSA meetings. Dr. Swanson has attended some PTSA meetings. We also attended meetings with the GIGO mayor and vice mayor to also hear their concerns. as they represent their constituency. And so, we know that this is not the most ideal, but in the interim, it works. We've even afforded students to withdraw from JFK and enroll as out-of-district students in other schools because they didn't want the release time at 12 noon. And who knows, they probably ended up at GW or Teton because they're on a regular school day, or Southern High as their regular. So hopefully this helps. And I'm not sure if Ms. Masnayan, if you wanted to give some feedback as well. You're good? Okay.
Oh, sorry, can I just clarify?
Sure.
The survey that you were talking
Yes.
about, the one that the students gave their input on, like what were the options available to them? I'm sorry, can you just repeat that?
You want to know the option?
Oh, yeah, 'cause you said that, I think.
Oh, okay.
there's some-
Option 1 was status quo. Option 2 was alternating days. Option 3 was to have the double session with FBLG, but we know that that's the given. Once the FBLG campus is cleared to occupy. And then option 4 was the 3 days per week to include the Saturday. And then option 5 was the reassignment of attendance areas. And so of the students who responded, 59 chose to have that as their top option. And then in the commander report, we did stress some of the concerns about why reassignment of attendance areas may not be of the best option for now. And so I can ask Dr. Rossetti to give you a copy of that and share it with the student leaders so that you can use that in your fact finding.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
But one more question.
Sure.
Because our situation is so unique, is there still a required amount of class time that we have to retain?
Basically, none of the double session schools will have professional development after the first 3 days of the school year. And so we're looking at maximizing instructional time. So that's why I think JFK is going longer this year. You end at 12, and that's why Simon Sanchez is ending at 5:50, I believe, which a lot of people in the community have expressed their gratitude that they're no longer Simon Sanchez isn't getting out at 5 o'clock right in the middle of the traffic. And so we've made some changes. And like I said, the best way to ensure that your voices are heard is to meet with your administration and come up with viable solutions to ensure that mental health needs are being met, socialization concerns are being addressed, and that as we go through this school year, that your voice is being heard.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I at least want to share because I'm just the oversight chair for education, but I did meet with the, just to share with the community, I did meet with the JFK PTSA committee or the group. And then I also had the opportunity to meet with the Simon Sanchez faculty. There definitely is, there definitely was a disparity between the sentiment I got from the parents, teachers, and staff at JFK, and then the sentiment from the Simon Sanchez faculty and staff. But then the survey results were definitely not a reflection of the sentiments I got from the JFK PTSA, which really the ask when I met with JFK was they want to go back to a normal schedule. They want their students to get, one of the arguments was, more learning time for students. Then of course, Simon Sanchez, their plea was they, don't want to be bounced around, and I respect, I acknowledge that. But what I will say is I'm not a fan of, I was in double session actually when I was at GW, and I know how hard that could be. This was back in like 2000s, the early 2000s. Yeah, 2000. Yeah. Well, I think it started when my junior or senior year, and so I know how hard it is. So I hear you, the student from JFK that's here, and we will definitely, again, we encourage you again to continue to have your classmates speak up. We'll continue to again come back and engage the teacher, the teachers and staff and the parents, and do what we can within the available resources. But I just want to at least share that because I get where there is a mixed, mixed feelings amongst the different communities in regards to what the community wants. And so, again, continue to engage your administrators, and they'll continue to push it up to the leadership team here at TDU, and we'll work through that. But we hear you, and we want to figure out a way that addresses everybody's needs. Thank you. Anybody else have any other questions in regards to the, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, good evening. My name is Angelo Andres. Thank you, Senator, for actually coordinating this town hall. It's the beginning of the school year. Really great to actually get together and address some of the concerns that we have as an educational community. And I hope that you continue doing this throughout the whole school year. But I'm just listening, and I'm looking at all those schools and the progress that was made, and all the money that was going to those schools. And I'm looking completed, they're working on it, they're doing all these other things. And in the back of my mind, I'm just thinking, where was FB, right? If the funding was identified, if the funding was moving for these other schools to be worked on, why didn't it happen with FB, right? So again, probably different funding. And I know that there was some federal funds that were tied into that, but the federal funds were kind of going to be there. And it made me think about, our situation with JFK, because I don't know if you all remember, there's some people here that probably didn't. We were double sessioning in Tizen for 1 year, got out of double session, GW for 1 year, got out of there, and then we were able to go to Tizen for 2 years. And in those 2 years, we were able to get our school built, right? We were able to get the funding, we were able to get support from the legislature. It looked like the legislature and the executive branch worked together. And we were able to get it done in 2 years. So again, going back to FB, did the legislature or even the department think about probably going to the legislature, probably getting some funding to kind of, work on the project pending the federal funds? Could it have been worked on? It didn't seem like it was a priority. And the other schools, again, I have a brother-in-law who works in Agada, he's always talking, our school's getting fixed, we're getting all this. And I'm just thinking again about the schools that in FB that is just staying stagnant. And then there's also, I guess, issues with the doors being the wrong doors. I mean, it just doesn't seem like there's that rush or that desire to get it fixed on time. Could that have been a possibility, probably with the legislature, to do the funding? Second question that I have is that, I'm an Islander, graduated from JFK. I teach in this school. My boy is a sophomore now. Of course, we all want what's best for our kids, right? And so speaking and advocating for my school community and also for my boys' education, kind of looking at our situation, we really would hope and pray that there's going to be no other delays to actually end, and hopefully we can end double session at JFK. But when I was looking at some of the things that were up there regarding, what else needs to be done with FB, Superintendent Swanson, you mentioned about the cafeteria equipment, student and teacher collateral equipment, right? So I guess that's a separate thing that needs to happen. Is the funding all secured? What delays with solicitation of the procurement process prevent FB from opening? If there are delays, with the cafeteria equipment and the student and teaching collateral equipment. Was that something that could have probably been taken care of, or ordered, or looked at, or helped with the funding from the legislature and probably taking care of that first? Because again, there's always going to be things that are going to happen that's going to delay, right, the opening, and we can always blame it on that, or the delay of this, the delay of that. We were kind of also promised that we were going to have a double session last year, but again, there's other issues that happen. There's a benchmark already. There's a time frame of March that FB is going to get fixed. Is that something that the committee or leadership is actually looking at as a viable alternative to have Sanchez double session with FB, or is there something else? So again, just all these questions, and I'm glad that we're having this dialogue. But again, we double sessioned with GW for 1 year. We were at Tizen for 2 years. The school got built for 2 years. In 2 years, Sanchez has been waiting since 2013. 2013, and the reason why I say that is because after our school got built in 2012, my wife tried to do the same thing also at Simon Sanchez in 2013, and she started that movement over there. And point being made, it's a long time coming. And if we were able to do it at JFK, and that model still exists, what's the delay? What's the delay? Okay, thank you.
Can I respond, Mr. Sanchez? So here's what's going on at FB. It's not just because of Typhoon Mawar. There's a lot of things that needs to happen there. Installation of evening restrooms, walkway canopy, floor and ceiling repair installation, classroom and office partition installation, exterior and painting. We were actually moving it really fast. Really, at F&M, we meet every day with the contractor. The funding, I always bug him. I said, I need a 3.5 for a change order. If we could finish it in January, we'll finish it in January. We also have an option to have the temporary classroom for Simon Sanchez, which is what we're working on with the governor's office. That if FEMA allows us to extend the project until March, that's also another option for Simon Sanchez. We're exploring everything for you guys because I hear it. I have the robotics kids in my office every day, and I hear it. And I can sympathize with, they said, Miss or Doc, we don't have a passing time. We can't meet with our organizations. We eat lunch really fast. I hear their pains, and I'm really trying my best to get this done really fast. And I don't know how fast can we get the funding, but we're working really fast on this thing. And I think the board will have another option, and it's being brought up in the next meeting. So they're exploring that too. Dr. Carter, do you want to say something?
So if you review the minutes or if you review the broadcast of our last board meeting, the board chair did assign or create an ad hoc committee to remove double session. So that is already in progress. The committee is being formed, and that information will be made available as the committee meets. So the intent is to stop the double sessions. Look at all the options to do that.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Just the presentation.
off the topic of FB and Simon Sanchez. I just wanted to know, I know it was on the slide and it said ongoing, but I wanted to see if we could get like a status update on the grounds maintenance contract. So maybe just last week, we were already asked to assist UP Elementary with cutting their playground, right? And there are 3 elementary schools within Yugo, and I feel like it's only a matter of time before the other 2, Dio Perez and Machinano, ask us for assistance as well. And of course, it starts with the playground, for our students to play, but then aside from that, we've also helped clear vegetation off of their entrance and exit gates and stuff like that. So before you know it, we may be asked to assist with cutting the whole school. And I know we've advocated in the Mayor's Council of Guam before that, we should say that that's not our job, but these are our students of our village, and it's kind of hard for us to say no. We want to help them, we want to assist them. So I just wanted to, I know it's an ongoing, but I wanted to see if there is any time frame for us to, I guess, kind of see when that contract can go through, will go through, and if not, so that way we can better prepare.
So just to let you know, right now, we're operating on a 24,999 purchase orders, no purchase order, to service all the 15 of all the schools. At the same time, the procurement for grass cutting is ongoing. Ms. Carmen and Nick, I think the RF or tomorrow is the bid opening. So we're trying to service all the schools. We're trying to avoid having the mayors, cut the grass for the schools, but we're really, making sure that all the grass are cut in every school. So that's why we have the, purchase orders, small purchase orders. So
Thank you.
tomorrow.
So tomorrow's the bid, and then Wednesday you guys
Should
got
be
it.
fast. I think. I'm crossing my fingers, right, Ms. Carmen? Okay.
It needs to go through legal once we're done.
Okay. You know how the Guam procurement goes.
Yes, sir.
And of course, if there's no protest,
Exactly.
we get a protest, we're set back another year. But having said that, I know everybody's interested in Simon Sanchez High School and William Guerrero. We do have an ad hoc committee, as Dr. Okada said, that was appointed at our last meeting. And she will have her initial report in the September meeting as to what the options are, where we can go, how we can get there, and what we can do. But I want to commit to you today, Angelo, and to the student from Simon Sanchez, and all of you that are interested, I will commit to you today that come school year 26-27, there will be no double session. JFK will have their own campus, and Simon Sanchez will be put into a campus. And FB Young Guerrero, once it's completed, also will end the double session at Okadu and with FB. But even after I say that, I want you to think about something. These moral balance reports, data reports that have come out, have shown the 2 schools that are in double session actually ranked high in performance. And that's Simon Sanchez and Okadu High School. So we want to give them kudos, because even with the amount that's taken away from them as far as learning time, even as we go through this period of not providing our students their own place to learn, they excel in certain areas, these 11th graders that are in these 2 schools. So kudos to Simon Sanchez and kudos to Okuru High School. I don't think that has been brought out too much, but if you read the report, you're going to see that. But like I said, our commitment to you is that we will no longer have double session for the next school year. There is a plan, and I see former Senator Roy Canata here. There is a plan and already approved by FEMA to fund 20 temporary classrooms up at the FB Guerrero site, which is adjacent to the Guam, it's the Guam Housing Corporation actually property that's adjacent to FB Guerrero. Now we're, as a board, we're trying to decide how we can best use those classrooms. Because as it is right now, those classrooms are not equipped, if we use it for Simon Sanchez, to have the programs that GCC has for our students. Because you can't have an auto repair class in a temporary classroom. You can't have a nursing class in a temporary classroom. And Dr. Akata is here, and she will tell you that she's committed to having these programs continue, but we have to look at options. And one of the options I brought up to her last month is, what if we just have the classes over at GCC for these students? What it would require, again, is a busing nightmare that we have to work with. Because we would have to bus these 300 some odd students daily, or how many times they have, Dr. Okada, you can correct me if I'm not saying it right, but we would have to bus them to GCC so that they can have those classes. It's very unfair that as we wait for the completion of Simon Sanchez, that these programs for these students cannot happen simply because we don't have the classroom. Now, whatever options we choose, I know that not everyone is going to be happy. Certainly not everyone is going to be happy. But we're working on it. And we'll give you those options way ahead of time so that everybody knows what we're going to do, not just 1 month before the school year ends and tell you you no longer have school or this is going to be your campus. So from September on, it will be on our agenda every month to give you an update of what's happening. And I know that GDOE and the board are also looking for a new superintendent. And that announcement was supposed to come out today. And I understand that even before the announcement came out, we already had an applicant from Off Island submit their application. But be that as it may, this is being coordinated by our HR administrator, Ms. Ada, and of course, our board member that's been assigned to this, Ms. Maria Gutierrez. So you'll be seeing updates as far as the search is concerned. As far as the option for what we're going to do, maybe many of you don't know that this facility that we're sitting in right now and the Teaser facility next door costs the taxpayers of Guam $9.7 million a year. And we don't see that because it doesn't come out of the GDOE budget. It comes out of a contract that is, Senator Kinata, it comes out of a contract that was promulgated at the front office. So they pay for the contract. It comes out of, I believe, the executive budget. It doesn't come out of GDOE. But could you imagine what we can do with $9.7 million if we don't have to pay for facilities leasing? It's going to be another, how many years? This is a 40-year lease. By the time we finish paying that lease, I'm going to be 6 feet under. Many of us are probably going to be 6 feet under. And then we leave the bill to our kids. And certainly, that's not fair and it's not right. And so we're going to have to figure out a way, and the person assigned to find out how we can change that situation is Dr. Judy Guthers. And she's going to also report at our next meeting as to what ways she's suggesting to save us money. As you also know, Chief Brody Elementary School and LBJ Elementary School. Although we had interest from a charter school today, I just got an email from a church group that want to use the Chief Brody facility, but I just had to respond back to them that we got the opinion from the Attorney General that the only way GDOE and the board can do anything with these facilities is to allow their use during non-school hours. We can't lease it out, we can't assign it out, we can't transfer it out. It has to come from a statute that is proposed in the legislature, passed by the legislature, and signed into law. And so my main concern, of course, Superintendent, is we don't want the situation to stay this way too long, because those two schools are going to fall into disrepair. They're going to fall into vandalism. It's going to fall into maybe homelessness, people that will come around and try to do something to shower there, use the restroom there, or even sleep there. So we're going to have to find a way, even if we have to contract security personnel to watch those schools. But I'm going to ask our oversight chair here, Senator Moore, that maybe they're going to have to come up with that statute, because it can become a revenue source for GDOE, but allow us to be able to do it. And it's not just going to go to the school or to the charter school that's asking for it. It has to go through the procurement process. Whoever comes up with the best proposal, it goes through the procurement process, and of course, it's vetted, and whoever is chosen would be the one that will be able to use those schools. I also want you to realize that our budget for FY26, as passed by the legislature, is $266 million, which is $10 million than what we received this fiscal year. And a portion of that money has already been dedicated over to maintenance, which I have no problem with, because we know that our maintenance people work very, very hard to keep up with our schools. And you can see the difference this past year has made when we invested in fixing our schools, when we invested in hiring more personnel for maintenance of our facilities, that it really made a difference. Every school opened on time. And we're going to continue that way, hopefully, and get those scores up or grades up from a C to a B to an A. And we have some schools that have already reached that, and we want to keep it that way. The other thing that I wanted to mention is we're talking about recreational facilities. Now, right now, Simon Sanchez, the poor kids in football have no place to go. And I see them every night when I go home, because they're using a DPR facility or a field in Worcester. But how many hours, how much time do they have to practice? By the time they get there, it's almost 6:30 dark. And what are they going to see during that practice? They've been asking, can we help them get power lights? And maybe I'm going to ask the Sprint to try to invest in something to get them that. The Vice Mayor of Jigo, the same thing, requesting us to find some other way Simon Sanchez can have a field to practice. Rugby, same thing. All these outdoor sports are asking where they can go, because the JFK students have their own time to practice, and certainly we're not going to take that field away from them. Whether we can share it or not, it actually again depends on how much time is available. Southern High, I know that none of those facilities are being used. But I just want you to know, as the superintendent has brought up, we have a plan that's in process. There is a 5.5 million DOI mitigation funding, federal funding, that is being made available to Guam for Southern High. And we're going to use that to mitigate the flooding at Southern High, fence off the areas away from Southern High. But I want Southern High students, administration, not to fear, because the first thing that MOA, if it does happen, in getting that grant, is that Southern High School and their students will get first priority in using the baseball field, the softball field, tennis courts, and whatever facilities are there. The only thing that won't be up and running will be the swimming pool, because it just costs too much money to refurbish it, repair it. The estimate right now over $6 million to get the swimming pool up and running. But there are other ideas. We can fill it in and make it into a skate park. We can do something else with the pool. But also people are trying to say, hey, it's an Olympic sized pool by a few inches less. Can we just keep it like that and be able to look for money somewhere so that pool is someday utilized? So that's the status of the Southern High. The only thing that we're not touching at Southern High is the Fine Arts Theater. And I know that theater, I was talking to the superintendent about it. There is an organization on Guam that's willing to come in and see what they can do to lease that facility, refurbish it at no cost to Southern High, at no cost to the government, and be able to turn it into a theater that everyone in Guam can use. So those are my updates, but I think the main concern that you probably wanted to hear is the status of Southern High, Simon Sanchez, and FB's double session. And I know we can't give you much more information on Simon Sanchez because of the embargoed information as far as the contract negotiations are going, but I'm sure that soon when it comes out, everybody would know. We're trying our best to see whether we can break ground for Simon Sanchez this school year or this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any other questions that we can meet from the audience in regards to the slides before we go into just open?
Yes, actually, so bringing it back to my name is Ethan Cruz from the General Mayor's office. Thank you. I work with Vice Mayor Pedro Blas, and a lot of the issues coming out of the constituency in Jigo really come through the office, and I really believe that we're here to advocate for them. So first of all, the first thing I wanted to bring up is, I'm sorry I was a little bit late, but I didn't notice on the slides anything regarding security in the schools. This is something that is that we hear a lot of coming through the office. When the school is broken into or something happens to the school, a lot of times they call the mayor's office first, because many of these things happen on the weekends. As a prime example, over this past weekend, there were 2 vehicles left in front of a school gate in Jigo. Lucky for us and lucky for the school that the vehicles were removed before school opened. But we don't know who they were. Then looking back at it, it's like, if somebody was to really just leave that vehicle there, we wouldn't even know where to look or where to begin to look for the individuals responsible. And this is the sad reality that we live in right now. And it's very evident that the society we live in now, there are outliers that don't care about the structure and the hard work that everybody's putting into bringing the kids back into the school or putting them into quality schools. As an example, the renovations that are being done to the school, the temptation is that there's going to be somebody going in and vandalizing the school. So that's one of the things I wanted to advocate for, is some type of monitoring system for the school. And I bring this up on a personal level because I'm part of the PTO for one of my son's schools, and we have just invested into a security camera system that we're looking at installing this month. And I feel like this is something that's very effective, and I didn't notice this in a lot of the schools that we service in Jigo. And I feel like this is something that I think would be very effective in deterring crime, because it works at the school that my son goes to. So the vandalism is very, very low, doesn't happen very often. But when it does, we're at least able to look at where they entered from, what they look like, what they were wearing. These are things that we can use to identify them and hopefully catch them. That's one. So I'm wondering if that's something that we can build into the plans for the renovations of the schools, especially the schools in Jigo, going forward. That's one. I do have a couple of other questions. I'm sorry, I'm just going to be speaking for a little bit. So one thing that we're noticing also is that at the beginning of the school year, the first week was a little bit hectic. The vice mayor and the staff, like myself, we assisted with traffic in some of the schools in Jigo. And we noticed that DPW has a specific bus schedule, and we were wondering why it's so early. It's because there's a little bit of an issue with districting in Jigo. We have the district for one of the elementary schools is way out. The bus literally passes another elementary school before it reaches the school that they're picking up the kids for. So that kind of causes a little bit of a traffic issue on that. Specifically, I'm talking about Upi Elementary and Gil Paris. I know this has been identified before, but I just wanted to bring it up to see if there's any movement as far as potential redistricting. And it's also something to look at as well as FB and Simon Sanchez are beginning to look at opening, because from what we've noticed as well, there are several housing developments preparing to open in Jigo, which means population's going to go up. And we don't know the details of Simon Sanchez and FB's refurbishment, and if the schools would be able to meet that capacity, or if there's some other way to redistrict the students that are going to be participating in those schools. That's one. That's the second one. The third one I wanted to bring up is, of course, Simon Sanchez and FB are both encountering double session. They're both scheduled for the evening times. With Simon Sanchez, we give a little bit more expectation to the kids, more than we should, because it's high school students, they drive, right? What I'm talking about is we have opened the gym. The mayor and vice mayor have opened the gym to indoor sports to host it for the schools. So both FB and Simon Sanchez utilize Ego Gym, and we try to share it with the public as well. But we've worked out a somewhat of a schedule. But what we're now encountering is that the kids specifically from FB have an issue getting to the gym, because they have to come out from double session, get dropped home by a bus, and then their parents have to drop them to the gym, and sometimes they leave them there with the coach while they practice, and then they have to come back again. So if there's a possibility to identify a specific bus that would pick them up for practice times, depending on what the coaches decide for the practice schedule, whether it be in the evening, because I noticed this is something that has been a daunting task for the parents and for the coaches. I mean, I feel bad for the coaches because they cannot be full coaches, because they're like, oh, you're late, go run a lap. Now it's like, oh, you're late, oh, because I know your mom had to get off and you didn't have a ride. And the coach cannot pick up all of them with the stipend that they get. They can't pick all the players. So that's one thing. So if there's a possibility to identify a specific bus, whether it be a DOE bus or something like that, or if there's funding to use or to rent a private bus. Lastly, just to follow up on the vice mayor's concern about the grass cutting. So I know, I don't want to say I know, but I'm going to go ahead and assume that we may encounter issues with the contractor missing cuts. So if there's a way to build into that procurement process, if they miss a cut, the vice mayor has been very, very diligent in checking in with the schools to see if they need assistance. So if it comes to a point where they need the grass cut because the cut was missed, and the office does cut the grass, can we charge the contractor in that instance for the amount? Only because they're not fulfilling their contract. We're working in a symbiotic relationship with the schools, being there to support them. And it's not about the money. It's just keeping the contractors accountable for their responsibility in cutting the grass for the schools. Because it's not a problem. If it's for the kids, the vice mayor is always out there doing things for the kids. But then where does the accountability go? You know, I mean, is the contractor just gonna say, okay, next month, maybe I won't cut it next month? So to avoid that, if there's a way for us to charge them, because we did the service, the office did the service, can we charge them for that amount? Sorry, those are all my questions.
So, it's a good thing your question is not about procurement, but, thank you for bringing that to our attention. From now on, when we get the contract, we'll make sure that there's a QC that sign off on their job for the day. So I'll commit that to you. We'll put that in our thing. Thank you.
Any additional questions?
Hi, my name is Tia Jackson, and I go to Teason High School. I'm just here to touch up about the status for Teason High Schoolers. I want to mention that there's conversation and concern around my campus from the administration and the teachers about some members deciding to shut down Teason and having people from Sanchez reside there instead. Could you please give us some clarity regarding this subject? And I know the root of this question is very repetitive amongst the others, but I just want some clarification for me, the students, and the administration.
We haven't come to that point yet, but it may happen. And remember, let's go back in history. Teason was not meant to become a school. It was meant to be a temporary facility when other schools are being repaired. Teason will be used to house like GW, JFK, whatever. But Teason was never meant to become a full school on its own. And so that's where we got into this whole thing. I wasn't a part of the board then, but I know some board members have told me that if we had only kept to that process, we would have a facility today. We wouldn't be having double sessions because we can just transfer one school that's being repaired to Teason. And so when those options come up, like I said, we're not at that point yet. And I did mention earlier on that not everyone will be happy. But there is amongst the board talk about redistricting. And when that happens, some of the students from Teason will go back to wherever school they came from or other schools to make that place available again for schools that are being repaired. And I know you guys don't like it. You're already comfortable in having your own school. But these are the options that we have to consider. Like I told you, the superintendent mentioned at the testimony in front of the legislature that we may have to close up to 10 schools if we don't find the funding to be able to fund all these schools. And so we have to face reality. Whether or not we like it, we need to do something to make sure that we live within whatever funds they give us to live with. And if it means closing more schools, then that option is going to be on the table. I don't think we're going to be closing 10 schools, but there is a very good possibility, and maybe the superintendent can expound on that, but there is a very good possibility that the board throughout this year will be looking at, if the redistricting doesn't do it, then we're going to find a way to be able to shut down a school again, because we just don't have. And remember, the population of the schools has gone down. And maybe Mr. Sanchez or Dr. Adamus can expound on this. There is capability in our high schools to redistrict people around, because we're not at 100% capacity in any of those high schools. Many of those high schools still have a big percentage that they can accept students. And we were even talking about what happens to CIFA if they could not find a facility. And we were saying there is room in our own public schools to absorb the kids from CIFA, if it happens that way. And so I know that, come to the meeting in September, it's September 16th, I believe. It's a Tuesday. You're probably not gonna get a definite answer then, but you're gonna hear about options that have been coming up, that will be coming up for where we're going to put Simon Sanchez and where we're going to put FB down the road. I hope that answers your question.
I just want to mention again, it's not more so about the comfort, it's about the logic that's put in to Simon Sanchez moving to Tizen. It's not cost effective, one, for Sanchez students to move to Tizen. Tizen may not be a legacy school, but it is a model school and it's nationally accredited. And the option shouldn't be out for Sanchez students to move to Tizen High School. I don't think it should be considered at all, considering how effective Tizen's teachings are and how complicated the processes would be to move Sanchez to Tizen High School, because as you said, the fundings are complicated and whatnot. It would be a lot more reasonable to redistrict Sanchez students to their nearest high school or whatever high school that they're closest to, rather than entirely taking over another school that is, again, a model high school that's leading us towards a path of career readiness.
And I certainly hear you, but all of these questions and all these debate stuff are going to come up. Everybody is going to push for their point. Everybody's going to say, it shouldn't be this way, it should be that way. It's going to be a long process. It's not going to be answered in September, but your concerns and everybody else's concern is going to be considered. It's not going to be an easy decision for this board to make. That I can assure you. It's not going to be easy. But we have to make the decision as to how we can end the double sessions in Simon Sanchez and FB Young.
It's really unfortunate to hear that because, I'm Bill Tyson, I'm a teacher at Tizen High School. And it's really unfortunate to hear that because in April, you guys told us that, you guys were not going to close down Tizen High School. And you, Mr. Saplan, also specifically said that you were committed to not closing down Tizen High School. So it's frustrating to hear this because just a few months later, things change so quickly. And it's hard to have faith when you guys say, by March 2026, FBLG will be ready to open. Or it's hard to, have faith when you guys say Simon Sanchez won't have a double session when these things are just like changing so quickly. Like there's no consistency, there's no transparency. And I hope that when you guys are considering, schools to close and these kind of potential things, you guys are looking at them. Because like you even brought up like underutilized, like the schools are not at capacity. But Tizen is not the only high school that is not at capacity. So I hope, when you guys are going forward with that, there's transparency and you guys have an impartial way to really decide this and not just because Tizen is 10 years old and other schools are older than that, because that's not, I don't know, I just don't think that's very impartial.
Well, I can assure you, I know you're a teacher, and I just mentioned a few minutes ago, it's not going to be an easy decision. But there is no decision as of this time to close Tizen in favor of Simon Sanchez. That has not been reached. And so there is still deliberations to be made. You talked about redistricting. That certainly is an option to do. But every one of us sitting on that board, I tell you, we want to do what's best. If keeping Tizen open, as we committed, as I committed it back in April, then it will be. But we need to put all options on the table and everybody deliberate to see what is the best resolution. And I hope that resolution will not involve Tizen. But like I said, it's something that we have to put up front. We have to be transparent and open so that you know that everything is being considered. And that we also commit to you.
Hi, Dave O'Connor, high school graduate, public school system.
and community concerned citizen. Question, I applaud the board for having to establish a committee, but as a planner, I know that operations, which is on this side of the house, is the key to generate the data and the strategic planning associated with everything that needs to do with restructuring the whole DOE system. So my question, Mr. Superintendent, and where within your operations are these people at, and are they playing in this committee that the board is having? Because the data has to come from here, okay? Not from the board. The board is not the education operational piece. That's where it separates in my mind. But correct me if I'm wrong, because I worked in several organizations, and usually things in operations start at the operational level, presented to a board for decision. But that operations analysis needs to be sound and consistent, because I'm hearing it is not from the constituents. So I ask, is there a plan on the operation side to have key people who have the knowledge, who have the history to do the plan together, walk slow to move fast, so that when a recommendation and options are presented to the board has a holistic view of what's going to happen, okay? So that the board can make a good decision. Because I'm hearing the board keeps getting blamed for everything, but the data comes from operations. So if we can tie those two together to make it make sense, then that would be great. And then you won't hear things like, well, we heard 2 months ago that you promised us this, and then it changed. Well, because the planning is not solid from where I come from as a planner. So I ask that we move slow to move fast, so that the board can make the right decisions based on the data given from a comprehensive analysis. And I don't know who's on this committee. I assume there's a chair, committee member, but what I don't know is who's that composition. You don't have to answer that now, because then maybe it's not developed yet, okay? But what I'm hearing today is that the mayor's office probably needs to be a key player in that process when it comes to redistricting, and maybe even a faculty representation of some sort and a student representation of some sort to provide input from their perspective, even though at the administration and operations level, they should already know based on history what those concerns are, because this is not new, okay? And it's recurring. So I just suggest that whatever this committee is has key component to add in or out as needed, so that the comprehensive results of the operational input that comes to the board is sound and solid. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. I just want to let you know that the board is not going to operate in a vacuum. We're going to depend on operations recommendations. And I know that they're putting a group together, the assistant superintendents, faculty representatives, the mayors in the village that are being affected, some others, but Dr. O'Donnell or Joe, you can respond right here to the superintendent, but they are all going to be involved in this planning, okay?
Perfect. Okay, then, I wasn't assigned to any committee yet, so I'm not volunteering, but I can speak to the process that we had previously. We actually had 5 iterations, 5 different reports that went to the superintendent to discuss the different steps that we've taken. We've included teachers, we've included student input, we've included mayors. We had several, I think it's definitely over 14 or 15 different community sessions regarding the maximization of school resources. And the report that we ended up coming up with, we really tried to lay out all the different factors that the board needed to consider. We don't like calling them recommendations, because we're not recommending that a school be closed. If it was our choice, we wouldn't really close anything. But the idea is, this is the data, this is what it looks like, these are what the possibilities are. Now, 3 things that really stuck out, and this is just kind of from memory, and we deliberated on this many times. I mean, for administrators and teachers and folks who were just debating these things back and forth. Number 1, this is really a political issue, not just logistics and not just numbers. So I'll tell you right now, if we could do it just by the numbers, we'll just tell you, yeah, here, this is how many schools we need, close this many. really, if you just look at it by the numbers. Same thing with the high schools. If you just took the numbers and you took the student population, this is the student population, this is the capacities, this is the number of schools that we need. Now, which schools are going to stay open? That's the big question. And that's the debate. So it's not just numbers, it's not just trying to identify the schools, because that can be done very easily. But this is going to be a debate in the community, because number two, no one's going to advocate for their school to be closed. That's just something we have to acknowledge. And we put it in our report, we told the board, if you expect, let's say, for example, a school, let's say we're going to close school A. If you expect that somebody from the community is going to come and say, yes, we support closing our school, then you are setting yourself up for failure, because that is not going to happen. The two schools that we were, and I'm going to use the word successful, but that's not what I mean. I mean, the two schools that were closed, the main reason why is because those communities, I don't want to say supported it, but they basically stood down and said, okay, we get it. OBJ, we're right next door to winning. We understand the need. And basically they support it. They didn't want it, because even to this day, they're going to have teachers that are like, oh, Dad, we shouldn't have closed OBJ. Or parents who are in traffic right now at Civilian Elementary going, man, we shouldn't have done that. But the point is they didn't push back as much because they thought it made sense. They understood that it was going to save money. They understood that they were right next door. They already knew each other, so they kind of agreed. Chief Brody, same situation. They didn't want their school closed. Faculty wasn't happy, but they understood. They were moved several times. They were told for several years that they were going to close down. They never closed down. And somebody wanted a middle school. So that was kind of a give and take. It's like, yeah, we don't want to close that elementary school, but we do want a middle school. So basically the two schools, LBJ and Chief Brody, that we were able to close, basically it's because those communities stood down and overall supported it. Now, I don't know if we're going to get that from any other school, because if Teason comes up, are you guys going to rise up in support of that? Yeah, of course not. Yeah, I see what's going to go. Are you kidding? Of course not. Same thing with any other elementary school. Name one elementary school that's in your head that you think that community is going to support. So, not going to happen. This is a political discussion where people have to agree that, look, we may not be happy with what schools end up being chosen, but we have to agree that this is something that needs to be done. If that agreement is not made, then I don't think this is going to happen. And number three, whatever configuration it is, we did the distances from the schools. Now I know some people who lived in the Maine that are going to say, come on, nothing is far on Guam. That's true, nothing is far on Guam, relatively speaking. But in terms of where these schools are located, every school on the island is basically 2 miles apart from the next nearest school. The farthest was the southern schools. In Arahan to Modesto, for those of us who live in central and north, we think everything down south is close. That's not the case. They're 7 miles apart. That's twice as far as every other elementary school on the island to the next elementary school. Dale Heights to Agana Heights, from Agana Heights to wherever J.T. San Miguel. I mean, these schools are closer together than they are down south. So that's the issue. So the people from down south brought that up, and they were very strong about that. That you're going to require me to drive 14 miles if I have to go all the way to Talafofo Elementary School versus, just going down, down a few miles from where we're at right now. So again, it's going to cause a substantial amount of inconvenience, right? So that's something that the community has to accept. So again, that's again, I agree with you. Planning and logistics is important. We may not have been perfect, but I'll tell you, we did put a lot of work into that. Even measuring the distances from the schools, the capacities, we went back to double check the capacities and all of that. We even worked on projections with the mayors where, okay, well, how many housing areas are coming up? Housing areas, if you're a 4-bedroom housing area on low income, then guaranteed that there'll be at least 4 to 6 kids. So they're most likely going to go to public school. So we try to anticipate that. So I guess if we're going to be serious about doing this and be serious about moving down this road, the community has to understand that this is something that needs to be done, because nobody's going to want to do it. even a committee who's gonna have the responsibility of trying to move it forward. I don't think anybody in that committee, well, number one, I don't think anyone said we want to be on that committee. Number two, if you are on that committee, it's gonna be a very difficult responsibility, because again, this is gonna be very emotional, as we saw. You know, when we first wrote the report, before the board made the decision, this was all theoretical. Like we said, well, what could happen? What would be the concern? Sure enough, all of those concerns that we brought up happened. People coming in, protesting, calls to senators, calls to board members, calls to central office, students rising up, parents rising up. You know, I mean, all of that happened. And that was just 3 schools. Can you imagine 10? We have to be prepared for that. And the island has to have the political will to do this. And part of that has to be, like you said, the data has to show that this needs to be done. Because if we fail to convince the community that this needs to be done, and that means that's more of a financial thing, I don't think we're going to support that.
Thank you, Joe. Any other questions?
Yeah, if I could just comment following, then I'll sit down and not say anything else. Because I love planning, and I would love to be part of this, but I don't work at DOE and I don't work with the board. Even though my wife is on the board, we don't talk about those kind of things at home. We talk about other things. But you're right. What I heard you say is that the redistricting plan is a key factor in all of this process. And that's going to drive the train. I don't know how you came up with 10 schools without looking at the districting plan. So, but it might have been budget driven. I don't know. I don't have the data, but I got it. All I recommend as a planner, which is my background, is that this process is not a 1-year process. This is a 2 to 3 year process in the planning. And once a decision is made through sound analysis, okay, then yes, the politics will kick in after that, but you're gonna have the sound analysis first, okay? Then the politics will kick in right behind that, okay? But once that's done, there's gotta be a transition plan or a phase 2 to say, once the decision's done, you gotta take care of the people, the resources, the transition, and that's another year. Okay, so if this thing is gonna happen within a year, I can tell you already, that is a red flag. So please do not squeeze this process into 1 year when we know it's not going to work. Get a timeline that's realistic so that the folks on the ground can say, got it. It's gonna take 2 to 3, I got it, okay? Instead of, okay, it's gonna happen next year, and then when the next meeting is, oh, it's gonna be pushed back another year, and you're sitting here saying, what? You promised me this, and you promised, don't go into that hole again, please. Please, please, okay? Put a realistic timeline together after the decision is made for transition, especially the people on the ground who needs to transition to another location and the students know where to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
I think that there's good discussion regarding about planning. And I would remind you all that you have a master plan that former Superintendent Hernandez developed that talks about the aging of the schools, the population of the schools. It needs to be updated, obviously, because I think it's 5 years old. But that is the framework that you already have in place. It specifically talks about what work needed what work was needed at the schools, where the enrollment is declining, where it's increasing. And it seems to me that that's point number 1. And with that, we didn't then move forward. But as someone who's wandered some of your schools, I can't figure out why Ocean View Middle School is still open. Why that wasn't moved to Keaching at half its population of what it was designed for. So those things don't make sense. And maybe that's where putting together a new master plan and presenting it to the community and talking about the logic behind which schools may be at risk and which schools may not be at risk. I think there's a need to be done. And I dread to find out that we have spent millions of dollars on a school that was already planned to be closed. And that's the secondary factor to all this. While we're talking about schools that are underpopulated and repairing all of these schools, are these the schools we're gonna keep after you come up with your master plan? I don't know the answer to that. You know, it might have been, and I don't know this, I'm just speculating. Maybe FB was one of the schools that 5 years ago, they were talking about closing because it was so antiquated. And now we've just dumped all this money into FB to improve it. I understand the thought process about elementary schools. Every village wants to have their own elementary school. That's a hard one to answer, but middle schools and high schools, not so hard. Everyone buses to middle schools and high schools unless you live right next to it. Why I came here tonight was for a completely different reason, and that was to discuss the bill that was passed 2 years ago, the Public Schools ADA Compliance Act of 2023, and it puts forward a plan. I don't know that any of that plan has ever occurred. It says within 180 days, we'll develop a comprehensive implementation plan to ensure all schools are fully compliant with ADA accessible requirements. I don't know if this ever occurred. I haven't seen your plan. I haven't seen a timeline for addressing non-compliance. The second part of that. I haven't heard of any training that went on, and no one from DOE has contacted us to collaborate regarding accessibility, which is also part of the act. DOE shall collaborate with disability advocacy organizations and experts in the field of accessibility to develop and implement training programs for school staff. ADA isn't rocket science. I know this because I look at the ADA regs. Why haven't we trained teachers? Why haven't we trained school aides? Why haven't we trained administrators? So that we don't have to hire an expensive consultant to assess the school. So while I may have segued into what you didn't want, I nonetheless did. And that is Public Schools ADA Compliance Act. It was passed, it's of 2023. Where is the comprehensive plan? Or are we just planning to plan to plan? Which is what I think we're doing. Thank you.
If I may respond, Attorney Sandra Clerk, on the ADA study, Siemens has already completed half of it, and then we're paying them for the half portion of the study that we will this will address all the ADA compliance in all the schools. So I will have Mr. Tom Sabalka to respond to the training and accessibility.
It's not special ed, it's ADA. Tom is special ed. And I really get frustrated when everyone looks at Tom about special ed when we're talking about ADA. The ADA says buildings are accessible. That's what it says. It doesn't say buildings are accessible for special ed kids. It says buildings are accessible for everyone. So I don't mean to interrupt, but it's past 180 days. Where's our plan?
So
And you're telling me if it's halfway done by someone else, I'll send you the cheat sheets we developed for looking at your schools to see if they're accessible. That I use my advocates at the office to look at your schools with, that we use to look at election sites. They're not rocket scientists. You know, is there a slope? Yes. Is it smooth, clear, and flat? Or does it have bumps all through it so that someone in a wheelchair can't get by? As Dr. Swenson knows, is there an elevator if there's 2 stories? these aren't, you needed a consultant for. And I wonder how much money has been spent to hire a consultant when if you trained up your staff in a week, you could have your own checklist. Thank you.
I came to this, and the study is already awarded, and, yeah.
I know we do have an ARP contract for studies being conducted or being conducted. It's not just ADA, but social energy, efficiencies, and they're going to recommend how we can outfit our schools so that there's energy savings. But these contracts were in place before I came on board. I don't know if they were even in place before Superintendent Swanson came on board. But since the contract was in place, we do have to pay the bill. And with ARP being reinstated at June 28th, we have to pay that bill.
Is there a date for product to be produced then, if they're being paid?
What's your question?
When's the date of completion? It was supposed to be 180 days. That was 2023.
Yeah, we have paid the bill, and they were put on pause because of the problems we were having getting the ARP funds from USF. We have paid the bill, and they are now going to continue with the second half of the survey.
Completion date?
No, it's not once they pay it, because they still have to do the second part. I don't have an answer.
And then my second question becomes, Senator, how many reports have you seen regarding this? They're supposed to be reporting to the legislature.
I have not seen a report, at least since I've been in office, since January, so we'll definitely run to that and follow up with GDU.
Well, for everyone's knowledge, it is the Guam Public School ADA Compliance Act of 2023. It's in 17 GCA, Chapter 55.
Any other, thank you,
No other comments?
any other comments or questions?
Yeah. Hi, good evening again. I'm going to put my PTO hat on, PTSA hat on. Again, Angelo Andres from JFK. I'm also the PTSA Public Relations, PR, Public Relations Officer. And I just want to say thank you very much, Senator. And I don't know if the DOE leadership was also part in getting the PTO, the $5,000 for last school year. It really helped our school, and I'm sure it helped also all the other schools as well. I would like to know if that's something also that was factored into this upcoming school year's budget, if PTO will be also getting the funding, and then if we do have any, I guess, funds that we haven't used last school year, would that be able to transfer to this school year?
So to answer your question in regards to the PTO one, so this last budget was a balance between funding, and I'll tell you, this was a tough one because the Salopik Prince and Pot was one of the things that I really wanted to push over because there was more money to get to the schools. So we pushed for Salopik Prince and Pot to get funded, which is I think $50 per student that will go to the principals. I know the remaining funding from the previous school year should roll over because the lapse was allowed to roll over, so that should transfer over into the new school year. There is some work being done to, because we wanted to ensure that so the principals were funded, is that we need to identify another funding source to fund PTO. So to answer your question, for the new fiscal year, it wasn't part of that appropriation. But we're hoping, as the revenues, should the revenues do better than we expected, that we can appropriate that. But we're gonna hope that with the more money given to the schools to sell out the principal, that that offsets that. Because I know before that, which was why I said, for me, it was, hey, how do we get more to the schools? Because PTO was pretty much the outlier in helping the schools by fundraising. And so this will put more money in the schools. So it's just with a lot of the things that you guys have been helping with. But we definitely will continue to look for more money. But as of right now, no, there's no money right now. With the remaining funding, we'll move over to the next fiscal year. Any other final comments or questions before we wrap up?
Thank you, Tim Financo, GFT President and non-voting board member. In our last meeting, we kind of predicted that it would be 266 million. And I expressed our concern, and I understand that the students have left, that there's concern for teachers, and the teachers are still here. And Mr. Okada's insightful planning is true. We should follow that. But I fear you predict any layoffs, any furloughs coming up for the people who work at GDOE. We had furloughs in the past. Mr. Summerfleck knows that very well. And we also have had furloughs or 32-hour work week. We predict with this budget being 10 million less than the last year, that we'll be able to fund all the payroll staff. And I alluded to the cuts. If we do wait 3 years in planning, we won't have enough time to cover the shortfall immediately. We're almost at an emergency situation. I think that's why maybe the letter came out as 10 schools are going to have to be closed, which in reality, let's face it, really should be looked at very carefully. We lost 800 high school students this year, I believe is the number I remember, and we're still waiting since 2023 to fulfill positions that aren't even hired yet in the contract. And those positions are affecting directly the students who are being taught, such as school aides, 1-to-1 aides, now becoming 1-to-2, 1-to-3. Principals and teachers are worried about being able to teach their kids when they have kids with special needs that definitely need these assistance and help. School aides out, school safety came in, question about that. What is your future prediction for even next year's budget? Will it be higher? Will it be lower if we can't sustain at this budget?
With the GDOE budget, again, the discussions, again, the decision to fund GDOE at those levels was based on data, right? And one of the biggest things, and I'm a new senator, but even at the beginning, when we tried to declare an emergency at the beginning when ARP became a problem, if it's one thing that we know is that GDOE historically has always had lapses. They've always had money roll over into the next fiscal year. To answer your first question, do I think that there's going to be any layoffs? No, I don't. I believe that GDOE has the cash to be able to make it to the end of the fiscal year. In fact, to just, we're looking at least what was projected at the budget hearing was at least $11 million in lapses going into the next fiscal year. So it'll be the 266 plus the 11 million in lapses, so that is 277, plus the 14 million that we're gonna get back from the governor, which was like part of the 20 million that was transferred over for the loan mitigation, which has not happened. So that money is gonna come back to GDOE. So I don't foresee that. And I will tell you that I don't think any senator or governor will allow that. But GDOE, I believe with the data, the reportings that we see, that they have the cash to fund the department. And that's my position.
We're gonna, as the DFAS, we're gonna do, and we're actually doing things in the board's finance committee this Friday. We're working with the board's finance committee to see how we're going to tackle this shortfall that we have. It will be like last year. My budget guy is already going through all the requirements we listed. Things like 3.2 million we requested for network switches that are aging and have a possibility of failing. We'll cut things like that first. So we'll go through the budget requirements, cut whatever we can, either contracts that we lessen or reduce or do without. We'll look at what kind of supplies, like the network switches again. And then from there, we would look at, okay, where do we go with personnel? So it's going to be an analysis. We are meeting with the city tomorrow. We do have a lapse. We're predicting about 11.5 million. That lapse isn't because GDOE has extra money. It's because GDOE had a hard time getting certain contracts through. But that lapse is what's paying for ARP. And if I could ask the senator, what we do need is the flexibility to use that lapse for things like the elevators. When I spoke with the legislature, we needed, yes, I brought up Southern High School's sports facility, but that's only like a $2.5 million, $3 million bill. We could use the money for other things like elevators. Right now, our hands are restricted because of that, according to the law, is all supposed to go to sports. Yeah. So we may have to go approach the legislature again and ask that they untie our hands to allow us to pay for other requirements that are important for GDOE.
And we'll consider it. But again, I stand on the position and spend the money. And we say this all the time, and I'm a new senator, and I could get, we just can't, we see the budget, we see the demands across the government, and, our commitment, and I'm not gonna say I'll put my career on it, because I'm not a career politician. I'm genuinely here to help, but we need it, we'll figure it out. I'm not saying there's money in the back that I'm gonna go find, but our commitment, not just on my side, and I think any senator is we're here to support the education department, the GDOE and charter schools, but we keep saying it, spend the money and we'll assist. So that's my closing comment in regards to the budget. But again, to put on the record, there's not going to be a 30. The government, just to be very open, the government has too much money, $1.3 billion to didn't go to a 30. I'm sorry, to go to a 32-hour work week or layoff. And this is $300 million over the last 3 or 4 years since COVID. That's a lot of money. So again, we're here to support the department. We're here to support the teachers, the students, and yeah, I'm here to support Central as well. Superintendent Swanson and his team. I think we have a good relationship, and we're working with the board as well to support the department. So again, our commitment is still the same. We're here to support in any capacity. and to ensure that schools stay open, teachers get paid, and, students and teachers have the supplies and the resources they need, to do their job, and that's our commitment. Any other comments, questions before we wrap it up? One final one?
Good evening, everybody. I'm Antonio Wally II. I'm a JFK teacher as well. Not sure if this will you guys have the answer to this question, but it has been nagging me in the back of my mind. We've been talking a lot about consistency, and I heard one of you mentioning the fact that the superintendent position is open, correct? And I wanted to know, will you be prioritizing, for lack of a better word, homegrown talent when looking for your next superintendent? I heard you got an application for somebody off island, and I think something I think would be detrimental is if you bring in someone who doesn't understand the politics, the culture, the nuances that are happening at the school. I mean, we already know there are a lot of things happening at these schools. And again, that an outside opinion might be very helpful or might bring clarity, but I also feel like they wouldn't fully understand the weight or the severity of the situation as someone that would be from this island that already works in the department. We have a handful of great candidates. Some are even in this room. And I think maybe we should prioritize, if we're going to pick a new superintendent, someone that has been in the system, worked in all of our schools to any level or any degree, or at least works in the GDOE central office. And I was wondering, when it comes to the selection process of this new superintendent, will you prioritize picking somebody that is from the island of Guam, has worked here for many decades, and has supported every school, faculty, staff, board member? Will they take priority over somebody that's not from this island, someone that is an outsider? That's my only question. Thank you.
He wants me to answer that. I'd love to have somebody from the islands be the next superintendent. But unfortunately, we live with laws. And we cannot, at this point in time, just tell you you can't apply because you're from Timbuktu. Where, as you probably know, the application on US law, we cannot discriminate. It can only happen maybe during the interview process, but there is no specific requirement that an applicant has to be from Guam. We can't do it that way.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. We appreciate your voices, whether you're a student, parent, a teacher, administrator. We appreciate you participating in this process. So let's keep this going. Again, if you guys have any additional comments, questions, concerns, my office is always open to support. You guys can call our office at 9671-969-8423 or contact us at .com. Thank you, everybody. It is now 7:55. We are adjourned. Thank you. Have a good evening.